to commas.
Commas is all things tech.
You see culture and technology coming together.
Life hacks.
The practicality right now and the inefficiency of the internet of buying and selling stuff is extraordinary.
Entrepreneurship advice.
I think the first thing is you got to understand your business inside out.
Love and tech.
We've almost reduced dating to kind of this very momentary snap of a person.
It's gonna be a fire show.
I have yet to see something these days that's truly differentiated.
New advice and new inspiration every show.
It really is about the next generation of creatives going faster, further than we did.
And now, Sequoia Blodgett.
Now let's start stacking them commas.
Your finances are the bricks to building your entrepreneurial house, and Dominque Broadway is about to teach you how to lay your foundation.
Entrepreneurship advice. Learn from the hottest and most successful investors, founders, and innovators in the game.
Determine your greatness.
It's time to get your knowledge up.
Okay, for sure.
What's poppin'? We've got Dominque Broadway on the line, millennial money expert extraordinaire. What is good?
How are you?
I am amazing and so excited to get into this conversation because so many of us are struggling with our finances. But before we dive too deeply into that, I want to talk about your background and how you got into finance.
Oh, how did I get here? Well, it's interesting. I guess kind of taking it to the beginning. But yeah, I went to Bowie State University, majored in banking and finance, and I knew literally ever since I was probably 14 or 15 that I wanted to be a financial planner or a stockbroker. Like, was always just super obsessed with money, and not necessarily from like a Scrooge duck, aspect, but more just understanding like that money provided freedom and allowed you to really do whatever you wanted to do on your own time. And that was really something I always valued and cherished, just being able to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. And that's pretty much, how I just kind of got semi-obsessed with like all things personal finance and the stock market and things of that nature. And while I was in college, I started interning at UBS Financial Services, which is, I believe, still is one of the largest wealth management firms in the world. So essentially, I started interning there in New York, and then also ended up accepting a full-time job there. And basically, I became a licensed financial planner and stockbroker, and was managing money for clients that had $10-20 million in investable assets. And that was really how I kicked off my career in financial services or financial services.
That's awesome. When did you decide, because I know you had a brief stint in tech, when did you decide to make that transition? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say hopped around. Like, I've always pretty much been in personal finance. But I would say after working at a couple different financial services companies, such as UBS Financial Services and Edelman Financial Services, that's pretty much, I guess it's been about 6 years. I quit my job and started Finances Demystified, which is my company now. And I mean, obviously, I feel like even Finances Demystified is a financial education company, but there's a tech component with everything. Mm-hmm. So I had my company, but I also went on and became chief strategy officer for another financial technology company that I believe is still around. I'm no longer a part of it. So that was also really interesting too, just kind of seeing, helping to kind of grow in the fundraising stages of that company, being in one of the top educational technology accelerators in Boston while we were building out the company. So that was a short stint. It was like a year, but I was still running Finances Demystified during that time. But yeah, I like I said, it was a brief stint, but it's one of those things where I feel like technology it touches every single aspect of our lives. But I thought it was a really great experience. Like yourself, you've raised money and been in the tech space. But I think it's a very unique experience to be there in those experiences and in the pitch competitions and meeting with VCs and meeting with angel investors and learning about cap tables and all that fun stuff. And just really getting to see that side of not just technology, but of being an entrepreneur and being a business owner. So Yeah, that was pretty much kind of what that what that stint was like.
Nice. I want to talk a little bit about that because I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't realize the differentiation between finances on the tech side, being in a venture-backed tech company or a company that's going after venture versus having a profitable startup. Talk a little bit about the difference.
Yeah, it's that's actually a really good question. It's interesting because I started my company, Finances Demystified. Like I said, it's been about 6 years now. And because it started off as more of a consultancy, it's been profitable from the beginning, right? We've never had to raise money. It's, pretty much been, a six-figure. We haven't hit seven yet, unfortunately, but we've, a six-figure business for the past, 4.5 years, every single year. And we haven't had to raise money or anything like that. But then joining a company that was, I don't think we ever actually we got some, did we get VC money? Yeah, we got some VC money, but most of the money was from angel investors, right?
Got it.
And so it's just really interesting to see the difference between the two. And I think for me, it was also a little bit harder because I'm the kind of person where I'm an entrepreneur, right? And I just want to go out and make money. I don't got time to be asking people for their money, flying around town. And I'm the kind of person where I'm like, look, all this time that we're taking to court these angel investors and prove to them why we need their money, and then, get on the phone with, 10 VCs in a day. And, I just feel like we could be using this time to make money, turn this into a revenue producing company, into a revenue producing company. And I think a lot of times, startup founders, because I feel like startup founders can be different from like you said, kind of an entrepreneur or just a revenue producing company from the beginning. They kind of get addicted to raising money, and literally their job becomes going out and raising money, and their companies are a lot of times not making any money. And so it was really interesting being a part of that business while my company was still making six figures and it was doing fine. And I'm just like, why can't we just do this for this company? Let's get this company making money, and then it will be easier to raise money. But yeah, I think I really think in these times, people literally just get addicted to fundraising and being able to say, hey, I raised X amount of dollars. But I take a lot of pride in saying, hey, I have a company. I own 100%. It's a profitable company, and I haven't had to ask anyone really for a dime, and I've basically put all my time and effort into building the systems and building out services and stuff so the company can run itself, and I don't have to answer to all these other people. So that's, to me, kind of the difference in the two types of companies, but also in those two different types of experiences.
I love that you explained that. And I love that you highlighted that actually fundraising is a legit full-time job.
It is. It really is.
You are putting the business on hold so you can literally go out and fundraise. And I also like the fact that you highlighted that if you're actually profitable, 9 times out of 10 investors are going to come to you anyway because they're curious about what you're doing. So I think that's so interesting. So you being the millennial money expert, what are some things that you've seen millennials do absolutely wrong in the day and age of building our finances up?
Well, it's interesting. What are they doing? So many things, right? No, I think, I think we've all, even, me being a financial expert, I've made tons of financial mistakes. I talk about it all the time. And one of the biggest financial mistakes I made came when I was starting my business, right? And so in my situation, it was being so laser focused on my business, the first few years, the business not making the money that it needed to make because I was treating my business like a passion and not like a business. And so during that time, I had bought my first house at 22, had tons of money saved up, what felt like tons of money saved up by 25. And then by the time I started my business, my house was in foreclosure, my car got repossessed. And it's like, whoa, what happened, right? I was able to get all those things back, but then I also had to take a second, and this is where I think a lot of people mess up with their finances, millennials and whatever age you are. I had to take a a stop and take a second and say, okay, what is the current status of my finances? And I had to literally like treat myself like I do my clients. And I remember I called my grandfather and I was like, Papa, I'm coming over. I need you to like treat me like I do my clients. Like, I can't look at my finances on my own. It's giving me anxiety for some reason. I had to pull out everything with my name and a dollar sign and get a really clear picture of where I was financially, because I had turned my financial situation into this giant monster, like this giant monster. And I was like, oh my gosh, I owe $20 million bajillion. You know, I'm going to go to jail for owing all this money. And like, that's a lot of times what I think a lot of millennials do. We ignore our finances and then we take the finances and we turn them into this monster that we start to hide from because we feel like we can't tackle it. And I remember when I actually sat down and, you know, he was like, all right, we're just like you do your clients, we're going to take out everything with your name and a dollar sign, and we're going to open up all the mail. I wasn't opening my mail. You know, I was doing all those things that weren't right. And it was funny. I ended up owing, I had like $12,000 in debt. It was so small compared to this million bajillion that I had made up in my mind. But I think that's, like I said, where a lot of times millennials mess up, especially entrepreneurs, is we get so focused on our businesses that we start to ignore our personal finances, or we start to ignore finances in general. We say, okay, I can't pay the bill this month, but next month I'm going to make so much money anyway, it doesn't even matter because I'll be able to pay that bill 20 times. And that doesn't happen.
Right.
Yeah, I think we've all been there. But I would say even outside of entrepreneurs, another thing that people is messing up with right now, and it's so frustrating because I think the problem is actually getting worse because of social media. And, you know, as they say, comparison is the thief of joy, but comparison is also the thief of your dollars, which is really taking people's dollars. And so what I'm seeing right now is this huge shift where people are, you know, they're making good money. They're working at tech companies, or they're, you know, excelling in their careers as millennials, but they're trying to keep up with everyone else. You know, like back in the day, it was keeping up with the Joneses. Now it's keeping up with the Kardashians, and basically keeping up with everyone that you're following. And so people are literally overspending on cars, overspending on homes, overspending on vacations, overspending on clothing. And that's the biggest issue that I'm seeing right now. Like the amount of people that I meet that make six figures and don't have that, they have responsibilities, but not tons and tons of responsibilities, and are still paycheck to paycheck, is extremely sad. And that's why, you know, millennials, and especially millennials of color, the people of color, there's that huge wealth gap, right?
Yeah.
So that's some of the biggest, you know, I guess one of the biggest things I'm seeing from an entrepreneurial standpoint, but also from millennials as well.
So what can they do about it? Should they be focusing on budgeting? What should they be focusing on to get themselves out of that situation?
Yeah, I think people really should be focusing on, and it's one of those things that we know, right? But people don't do it. You really have to start paying attention to your money. And one of the biggest things I hear people say all the time, like, oh my gosh, I have no idea where my money went. Like some little man comes into their bank account at night and just takes it all out, right? And it's not the case. Well, it probably is the case, but you authorize him to come in there and take it out. But I think that's one of the biggest things. People are they're not looking at their finances. I still work with some clients one-on-one, and I'll ask them, like, how much money do you make? And they're like, oh, wait, let me pull up my pay stub. Like, how do you not know how much money you make? And I'll say, how much is your rent? Oh, let me double check. Like, these are things you should know. If you can't answer some of these basic questions, it obviously immediately tells me you have no idea what the current situation of your finances is. You're not looking at your bank account and, you know, on a daily basis. I tell people all the time, if you can take, you know, a minute a day, but for most people, it's probably a couple hours a day, and look at Instagram, you could also pop over to your banking app and just see what's going on.
Right.
So I think it's just becoming aware of the money that's coming in, the money that's coming out. I'm not even saying you necessarily have to sit down and make a budget, although that would obviously help, but just being aware of what you're making, being aware of what you're spending is extremely important. That's the thing, like wealthy people, people always like, oh, so-and-so is so cheap, you know, but they're wealthy. Well, how do you think they got there? They watch everything. they're watching all of their dollars, and they're not letting them they're not letting them just scurry away. So I think that's something that people need to do. And like I said, also just stop trying to keep up with everyone else, because if we all sat down in a room and the people that you're trying to keep up with, if they explain their current financial situation, you would realize, like, holy crap, like, I'm trying to keep up with them and they're over here struggling.
And they broke.
And it would make you take a second and be like, holy crap, well, I don't want to be like them. So yeah, I think that's what we need to do. We really have to start paying more attention to our dollars.
I love that you highlighted that, because I literally, full transparency, just recently learned how to budget. And I was like, why didn't I learn this in school? I was so frustrated about it. And
the funny thing is, like, it's so simple. And you're like, why have I not been doing this?
It was so surprising, because you could literally see every single penny and where it was going. Mm-hmm. And you know how to disperse your money properly. So that for me was like one of the key highlights of my recent moments. What tools can you suggest people use in order to kind of help to organize their finances, and what should they be looking to tap into?
Yeah, I think so I like to say there's no one size fits all when it comes to personal finances, right? So people are like, oh, everyone just should do this, or everyone should do that. I think you really have to figure out what works best for you. So for some people, they really like the envelope method, where it's literally taking money out of your bank account, separating it into envelopes, and walking around town with your envelopes. Not my favorite thing to do, because I would be like worrying about losing
right.
Envelopes, right?
My envelope.
But for some people, yeah, exactly. But for some people, that's what they're about, right? But I think for some people, they just like using Excel spreadsheets, and there's nothing wrong with that. Well, Google Sheets or Excel spreadsheets. Another really great tool is You Need a Budget. It's actually called You Need a Budget. We all have heard of Mint.com. Mm-hmm. Some people love it, some people hate it, but I tell people just try them all out and see which one you like. So Mint.com is also really good. Personal Capital is another really good tool. There's so many of them nowadays. Also, too, I've noticed a lot of our banking apps. You know, even if it's like a credit union, like maybe Federal or Chase or PNC or whoever, a lot of times they'll have the budgeting tools built within their own app. So they're making it a lot easier for you to go in and immediately see, okay, you know, I spent this money here or that money there. I think another cool tool that I was just reading about is actually with the new Apple Card. And
tell me about this, because I'm seeing the hype, and I'm like, what is the hype about? So tell me, please.
Yeah, you know, it's actually really interesting. You know, people just get hyped about anything Apple, right? So it's like, anything Apple, people are excited about. But I was reading more about it, and I was like, this actually could be this could be one of those things that will make people become or be more aware of what they're spending their money on, because within the Apple, like, so when you use your Apple Card, it actually changes colors virtually, you know, the one that's on your phone. It changes colors based on what you're buying. So let's say if you're, you know, eating or grabbing coffee at Starbucks, and Starbucks is marked as brown, you know, in your budgeting app, and your card turns brown or whatever. And then it automatically tracks within the app where you spend your money. So you can see, okay, well, 10% went to brown, 50% went to green, and they make it very simple. So I think that's really cool. I mean, there's not that many benefits to the Apple to the Apple Card, to be honest, but I do think it has some really great budgeting tools built within it.
Oh, that's so interesting. I was like, why is everybody so hyped? But yes, I like it. I get it. So tell us about the resources that you have inside of Finances Demystified.
Yeah, so Finances Demystified, you know, it has shifted quite a bit. We started out just doing only financial planning and financial coaching one-on-one, and now we've scaled into online courses, digital products. We do a lot of brand partnerships, and we're taking on a lot of more of those brand partnerships and working with a lot of major brands to amplify their financial literacy message. But For our consumers or our millennials, entrepreneurs, and creatives who are focused, we have we have free financial challenges. We have online boot camps. We have a lot of just kind of free and paid resources that we offer throughout the year. We also have our physical books, like our Dreams to Reality Financial Organizer, to help you organize your finances. So we have all different types of resources that are available to help people, demystify their finances and bring all their dreams to reality.
What's the biggest, I would say, demystification that you've seen come through your program?
Oh, it's been a lot. We've had some great success stories, I have to say. I think one of my favorite stories was I had a client who had about $60,000 in credit card debt. And
wow,
it was draining her every month because $60,000 in credit card debt is what? $1,600, almost $2,000 a month in minimums. It's a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she was spending so much, but she had the shopping problem and she kept spending. So she would pay the cards, spend, pay the cards, spend. And we worked together and got that debt paid off in a year and a half.
Wow.
And she had that debt for about 7 or 8 years. So she had literally had $60,000 in credit card debt for 7 or 8 years that she had been paying on. So as you can see, she wasted tens of thousands of dollars in interest, right, over all those years. But we worked together. We got a budget in place, moved some of the debt around to get it on 0%, and we just tackled it, and we got all of it paid off. And she couldn't believe it. I ain't gonna lie, I couldn't believe it because a lot of times we'll put these plans together and things will happen, right? But it depends on the person. I tell people all the time, I can tell you exactly what to do, but it's still up to you to execute and make sure it happens. Even if we have calls every month or whatever it may be. But I think that was one of my favorite cases, and I think one other was I had a client who was a doctor, and she was making, doctors make 40, 50K in their residency.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically she went from making 40, 50K to 300,000, in a month. And exactly, right? So she was it was one of those things you're all our prayers are answered, right?
Right.
And, they weren't, not for her, because she was still broke. And so she calls me, she becomes a client maybe 6 months after this $300,000 salary kicked in. And she's like, I feel broker. I don't know if broker is a word, but more broke making $300,000 than I did making 50. What am I doing wrong? And we were able to work with her to stop the leakage of all the money, because she was literally blowing, the $300,000, which comes to, a little less than 30K a month, just on random things. And we were able to help her save up. I think we got, 40K saved up in a few months. And then she actually ended up buying her own emergency care facility within a year. And so stuff like that is the kind of stories and things that keeps me motivated and excited to work with people, because it's you can literally make small financial changes and tweaks, in your personal financial life, and it can literally change the trajectory of your life and possibly even change the trajectory of the life and legacy that you build for everyone that's coming after you. So those are the things that get me, excited in the personal finance space.
Yeah, I love those two examples because they both hit very heavily on mindset. And I want you to kind of talk about what type of mindset you need to have, because you know how you hear about the normal everyday person who hits the lotto, now they're a millionaire and then they're broke next month. You know what I mean? Those type of stories. So what type of mindset do you need to have in order to execute on your finances and make sure that things are moving properly?
That's a good question. I think my mindset, like you said, is actually one of the biggest parts of your finances. I tell people all the time, finances you don't have to be a genius to budget, right? You don't have to be a genius to make money and save money. It's not hard. Any personal finance expert. The stuff that we're telling you, it's not rocket science. I'm not saying go to the moon, get a moon rock and do this. Like, I'm not saying that, right? It's like literally write down how much is coming in, write down how much is coming out. Literally, that's it. But I think essentially your mindset is key. You have to be ready to make a change. I tell people it's really similar to when people stop smoking or when people decide they want to lose weight. They have to get to that point a lot of times where enough is enough, right? Some people don't have to get to that point. Some people are just naturally in tune with their finances. They think long term. They're not just thinking about Friday night. They're thinking about 20 years from now. They're thinking about 30 years from now, right? So that's a different mindset where I know even people used to laugh at me and be like, why are you thinking about that? You're 20 years old. I'm like, because you have to think about the future. Mm-hmm. So even when I bought my house at 22, people were like, why are you buying a house? You're 22. You're still in college. And I'm like, well, because it could be a great, investment for the future. And if I retire later on, I can move back to this is literally what I was thinking about at 22, right? I'm a nerd though, but I think it's really those conversations and mindsets that people need to have. I think another thing is exposure. I think exposure is really important. And I was really fortunate to work with a lot of multimillionaires and see how they manage their money. And it's interesting how they say, poor people plan for Saturday and rich people plan for 50 years from now, for 100 years from now. And it's very true. And so when you have that poor mindset and you're just working till the next payday and you're only thinking about next week and you're only thinking about the following week, that pattern is going to continue forever and ever and ever. And you're never going to be able to get out of that paycheck to paycheck or whatever to whatever cycle, versus people who take the time to think long term. They have more financial stability because they're not just thinking about the next week, right, and the next paycheck. So I think that mindset is extremely, extremely important. And I think another thing I'm noticing people are dealing with mindset-wise is having a abundant mindset versus having a poor or broke mindset. And a lot of times within our community or even within our generation, we're the first people in our families to have, these jobs and have these money or raise these dollars. And a lot of times people are still getting this money, but they have a broke mindset, or they're not able to hit their financial goals within their business because deep down, they don't even necessarily feel like they deserve it. So they can't even go out there and get it. And so I'm realizing that there's this huge difference in this mindset of an abundance. One of the daily affirmations I say is I'm a money magnet. And it's true. Money is just automatically just comes to me every single day because I'm a money magnet. I'm not blocking the money. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like I'm not, having these broke conversations like, oh my gosh, I don't have as much money as so-and-so. I didn't make as much money as so-and-so. Those things kind of create these mental blocks. So I think it's really important for us to all just think more abundantly when it comes to our money and also being good stewards of the money that we get. Because, you're never going to get blessed with more money if you can't even manage the money that you have the right way. So those are all kind of mindset things that I think about that are really important when it comes to your finances.
I love that you highlighted that. And I want to jump into something really quickly. So obviously we have a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening to this show, and we're out there, we're looking for these customers, right? And a lot of the times when we're soliciting customers, one of the key objections is I don't have the money, right? And how do you get around that, right? As an entrepreneur who's selling your product or service, when someone's like, oh, well, I don't have the money. What do you do?
When I first started and people would tell me that, because I'm in a hard business, right? I'm not helping people necessarily make tens and tens of thousands of dollars. I'm really just helping people manage what they have in hopes that it will help them grow it, maybe not immediately, long term, et cetera, right? So it's a little bit harder of a sale. And I realized that people spend money on what they want to spend money on, hands down. When they're ready to spend money with you, like people tell me, oh, I can't afford your services. And I say, okay, when you're ready, we'll be here. Or I'll refer them to a nonprofit that can help them get where they need to be. And then when they're ready, they can come back to us. And I will never forget when I kept getting that pushback and I was like, man, maybe I need to lower my prices. And, but I didn't. But I remember I had a client and she told me, well, she wanted to sign as a client. She said, I gave her the price. And I think it was like, I don't know, whatever we were charging was like $600, something like that, right? $600-$700, not tons of money. And she's like, I can't afford it. And I said, okay, that's fine. I understand, blah, blah, blah. And we have been following each other on social media. I'll never forget, a week later, she posted a picture, a screenshot that she had just bought tickets to see Beyonce. They were basically the same exact amount, about $650 or so. And I said, well, look at that. She found the money.
Right.
to go see Beyonce. And that was one of those aha moments for me where it reminded me, one, don't ever, ever lower your prices for someone that doesn't see the value just yet. Because there's enough people out there who will see the value in you. And the people that do see the value, they're going to put the time and energy and effort to work with you. Now, she went and gave her money to Beyonce. Beyonce gave the money to Blue Ivy, and Blue Ivy probably just bought like scum with it, right? And instead of that, she could have worked with us, got her finances together, where she could have bought probably Beyonce tickets 4 times over. So I think that you can't take it personal if people don't see the value in what you're doing yet. Or know what you can bring to them. Just because they can, they don't go, people don't go into Nike store like, oh, I can't afford it, let me get a discount.
Right.
That's not how it works, right? So you're not about to come up with finances mystified and pull that either. If I do a sale, take advantage of the sale. But don't come in here and negotiate. This is not, you don't do that at Target. You don't do it at any other store, so don't pull that here. So I think as entrepreneurs, when you set your prices, stand firm in what your price is, because that's the value that you're going to bring. So I think it's important just to stand firm. If you're not finding clients that want to pay that amount, you're just probably you're probably seeking out the wrong client. That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. I think also too is understanding that everybody is not your customer, right?
Yeah.
So
and that's okay.
Yeah. So you're going to go out, you're going to seek these people, and eventually, like you said, somebody's going to gravitate toward your price point, and they'll probably be a lot less of a headache to somebody who tried to negotiate you down. And
that is so true. The people who are willing and ready to pay, who don't ask for discounts, whatever, they are no headache. The ones who want a discount, they want a payment plan, they want extra stuff, they always end up being a headache. Trust me. I'm sure you can vouch for that. Trust me.
That's great. So what are 3 key takeaways that entrepreneurs or even the everyday person can do immediately right now to change their financial situation?
So 3 takeaways. I would say first one is understand exactly where you are currently financially. Like I said, take everything with your name and a dollar sign, sit down, grab yourself a glass of wine, make an old fashioned, whatever, and get an understanding of where you are. You cannot take any next steps until you know exactly where you are. So I would say first step is know exactly where you are as far as how much money you're making, how much debt you have, how much money you're spending, how much money you have saved, what do you have in investments, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the first thing you need to do. You need to have a very clear understanding of where you are. The next step from there, I would say if you're trying to change your finances, is immediately create an action plan to create an action plan to reach whatever goals you've set. So if you're saying, okay, I know I make $3,000 a month and I have, X amount of dollars in debt and I want to pay this debt off, based on me taking a look and seeing where I am currently financially, I know I need to make this move, and this move. And write out what that action plan is and just start checking it off as you take those steps on a daily or weekly basis, right? So you have to create an action plan to actually do what you say you're going to do. And I think the last step is I think, honestly, I really feel like getting someone to hold you accountable is really important. And that can literally just be your parents. It can be your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your significant other, your children, whoever. Get someone to hold you accountable for what it is that you're trying to do. Because I think that's a lot of times that people mess up is they're trying to fix their finances in private. And so, you know, their friends are calling them and asking them to go out, and you're just like, no, I can't. Instead of saying like, no, I can't do this because I am trying to save up to buy my first investment property. So I'm cutting back on brunches for a couple months. And then your friends will probably be like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to do the same thing. This is great. Well, let's just like meet up at so-and-so's house and do brunch there to save money. Like if we started having these financial conversations and expressing what our goals are, our friends and everyone else would be more excited, or they would even know to support you in these efforts. So I think those are three things that we can kind of do now to see, honestly, quick shifts within your finances and with also within your mindset and the conversations when it comes to your finances.
You just triggered something for me, and that is talking about finances. I realize in other communities, I would say like the white communities, they talk about finances all the time. Like they'll be like, oh, especially like in the tech community or entrepreneurship, like, oh, how much money did you raise? Or how much revenue did you generate? Or it's a very fluid conversation. Whereas in the Black community, we don't say anything. And it's so strange to me. I'm like, how are we supposed to help each other? How are we supposed to collaborate and make sure that we're growing financially if we're not even talking about having these conversations? You know what I mean? So I think that's so interesting.
That's vital. And it's a definitely something that's like, it's a cultural thing, you know? And like you said, in the Black community, it's like, money's the root of all evil. Don't talk about finances. And you're like, if someone even mentions money, it's like, oh my gosh, cover your eyes. In other communities, it's, you know, bear it all, you know, where's your financial situation? And I was really fortunate where I come from, if you see me, a Black community. And so my family was very, you know, all African-American, but we always talked about finances.
Nice.
And it was rare. And that's when I realized that when I started my company, I'm like, wait, my family was really different. Now, my mom, like I was the first person in my family to go to college, but my mom was an accountant and my grandfather was the chief of IT for Department of Defense. And they all just talked about finances often. We weren't the richest people on the block, but we weren't the poorest either. We were definitely middle class, but we had those conversations. So every month when my mom was paying her rent or paying her mortgage, she would sit down and show me what she was doing. She showed me how to write checks out of her checkbook, how to balance the check register. My grandfather would show me like his thrift savings plan because he worked for the federal government. And they just wanted to make sure that I understood finances as much as I understood everything else that was going on. And like I said, I didn't realize that was something that was rare until I got older. And so even with my little sister, she just started college last week. She's at Hampton now. I'm super excited. We've been having those financial conversations with her. Like my sister probably knows the stock market better than most of my friends because me and her have been buying stocks and she was able to really read and understand what stocks were. And it was a very normal conversation. So I think, you know, those conversations are extremely important. Like you said, it's one of the things that's keeping us back as a culture and as a community, just not having those conversations.
100%. Well, of course, people, I'm sure, are going to want to have conversations with you. So how do they find you?
Yeah, so we're easy to find. So the website is just financesdemystified.com. It's also Finances Demystified on Instagram. And then my personal Instagram is Dominque Broadway, and that's pretty much where I spend most of my time. But you can find us in any of those places. And also links to all the websites are on both Instagrams as well.